Proving Grounds is a great introductory product for you and up to 3 other friends, whether you want to play a 1v1 setting like more traditional card games, or you are someone who really likes multiplayer formats. This product is going to have 4 different complete decks that you can dive in with to get your first look at Riftbound. Now, in this product, there is going to be a mix of exclusive cards as well as some additional cards from Origins, which is the first set. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at the exclusive cards from the set and why you should be looking forward to this product at your local game store. But first and foremost, we gotta talk about the update that we saw at the distributor level that Riftbound is sold out. This means you can no longer pre-order the game through your store. Now, there are still the mats and play sleeves that I've tweeted about previously that you can still pre-order, so supplies are still available. However, these suddenly disappeared as of today at the time of recording, or July 1st, that got pulled up almost a full month early. Now, this is a good sign for Riftbound because it does mean that there is a lot of interest for the game. However, we also know quite well, if you've been following other card game releases over the last couple years, we can also expect some allocations, which is not going to be fun to deal with. So we'll have to wait and see how bad the allocations actually hit. But based on what my local game store, one of the local game stores that I work with, heard from their sales rep, it sounds like there will be a Wave 2 announcement in the near-ish future. Sometime, don't have a timeline or anything, but it does sound like they're trying to get an idea on numbers to print so that they can address a Wave 2 of product availability. So again, this is strictly from the rep, kind of what they've been hearing. Take this with a huge grain of salt, but I would not be surprised at all if we do get some type of Wave 2 product. The big question, of course, is when would that land? Is it going to come before Set 2 drops in the Western market? Or is it something that we're going to have to wait, a couple sets in? Who knows? But hopefully they do find a good timeline to reprint it. Hopefully no later than the release of Set 2. But what we really want to talk about today, right, is the new and exclusive card. So I broke this down just by the legends and talk about their signature cards and what have you. And then there are also some additional cards at the end that are just more filler. Again, I do want to stress that there are other cards in this product that are going to be from the Origin set. So cards we've likely already covered on this channel and other spoiler videos. So today is really going to be all about just the new cards themselves. So up first, we have Annie is a Fury and Chaos legend. At the end of your turn, ready 2 runes. This is great for a more control style of option of giving yourself the flexibility to leave a couple runes up for removal. And because we're getting 2 runes back, we're still able to, for example, play a 2-cost unit. If we're going second, untap our runes, and then still have enough left over for a premium removal to make sure we're getting that advantage with like a Void Seeker or something similar. Now, I do like this card a lot from a legend perspective. Of course, one of the downsides, and I'll try not to repeat this too much, of selecting these particular legends is that you are then forced, of course, to use their signature spells or the champion cards that go with them, because for deck construction, you do need to have at least 1 copy of the champion unit to go next to your legend at the start of the game. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we got to talk about Tibbers, a 8 energy, 2 power, 7 might unit. So really nice and very flavorful that Annie is actually going to get a signature unit. Unlike the legends that have so far gotten signature spells, the unit here is a nice touch. But when you play me, deal 3 to all units at battlefields. Now, this will do damage to your own units. So in theory, on your own turn, right, you have to remove your own guys from whatever battlefield they might be holding, and then potentially use this as a way to clear out the other battlefield so that you can go in and deal the final amount of damage. Admittedly, a little bit of a awkward card to play at times, but if your opponent is holding both battlefields and maybe they've kind of widened out their field and split the power where they might, having something like Tibbers into a couple removal spells can absolutely clean up those battlefields for you so you can still come back and conquer them. Of course, Tibbers themselves being a 7 might unit is going to be very nice on that follow-up turn when it does eventually get ready. Then we have the Fury Annie, or Annie Fiery, right? Your spells and abilities deal 1 bonus damage. This is just great. Of course, this is going to count for things like Tibbers now going up to a 4 damage effect. And with all the various removal that we have in Fury that we have access to, it's going to be a great card and just a great addition that we've seen so far. We do have other ways that we'll try to either get some extra value out of like Kaisa and the Ithcan Rain to get, that damage boosted a little bit more. This does play very well with the battlefield. So This will be an interesting one to see if it does make it out of the starter set, because we're starting to see more of these bonus damage effects stacked together that can lead to some very big turns. And then Annie Stubborn, when you play me, return a spell from your trash to your hand. I love this card. And again, we are in Fury and Chaos, so it's limited. We're not able to put this version into the Kaisa deck, which would have really loved this card. Spell recursion is big. We just talked about this in our past video for a case of why you might run one card over the other, a spell and a unit that does the same thing. Well, in this case, Annie would be able to loop back that spell and allow you to then have the flexibility to revive something else. Or, again, to kind of beat the drum here of good removal is good removal to have, right? Why not just play another Void Seeker? Why not just get another key removal that is going to say, hey, I'm going to get to draw a card as well? So, again, from a very different playstyle, and maybe that's the other thing that I'm really going to try to highlight here, is that the Legend starters, as we'll just call them because they do have the starter subtype on them, right? They at least introduced a new playstyle that we haven't seen in these combinations based on the origin set. So for the sake of locals and making sure that we're trying to grow our communities and not just always play that tier 1, tier 0.5 insane deck, right? So that we can actually grow a healthy scene. Cards like Annie in this case are great at opening up other deck building challenges or options that can lead to new gameplay experiences. And that's where I think that this Proving Grounds boxed set does a really great job at offering some different cards to play with that admittedly can still be quite good. We'll have to wait and see where some of the other spoilers land between now and the 2 weeks that we have left of spoiler season. But this is one that I'm, again, biased as a control player, but still very excited to see where this goes. I mean, the 2 runes getting ready is definitely going to be a strong effect. Up next, we have Master Yi, the Wuju Bladesman. When a friendly unit defends alone, it gains +2 might, and this is going to be calm and body. So a very interesting combination when we talk about the rest of the cards, but just to focus on the legend effect, when you defend alone, get +2. In a lot of the calm stuff that we've seen so far, right, we have Sona, who loves to get the extra runes untapped and get extra flexibility in the calm spells that you want to be playing. So we do have that side of it where it gives you a little bit more might advantage while then leaning into more of the spell heavy sided focus of it. But then we have to remember that we're also in body, which typically has a combination of units that you want to be playing where you're maybe not getting the full effect of what Master Yi wants to be doing. So in this case, it does feel a bit more like you're having body as just an extra splash, as it were, for a couple cards, but this really does feel like it's leaning much more towards calm, where you want to be reactive, you want to go tall in what you're able to defend with, and actually goes well with a couple good cards early on that combo well with like Discipline to get your might buffs a lot higher than your opponent might be suspecting. Then we have 4 energy, the signature spell, Highlander, reaction, choose a friendly unit the next time it dies this turn, recall it exhausted instead. So this allows you to, in theory, save any unit that you want, which is expensive, which again, I understand this is a starter product, but if this was a little bit cheaper, this would be a really interesting calm style of card, right? Because the whole idea of calm is that I'm going to spend a couple reaction cards to force your opponent to do a little bit more to try to conquer the battlefield, or maybe they just finally want to remove that one unit that's been causing them problems the entire game, and then your final like aha gotcha moment is that you can use Highlander, save the unit. Again, they'll probably win the conquer point at that end, but you've chipped away enough of their hand that your follow-up turn should be strong enough with that kind of beefy all-in unit that you've planned around. Now, other than that, Highlander is very expensive for what it wants to be doing, especially when we have easy ways to save cards in the main set. That is definitely going to be holding this back a little bit, but I really do like Master Yi's ability and making sure we're getting that extra might bonus. Then we have Master Yi Meditative. When you have 8+ runes, I get +4 might. So this eventually becomes a 5 energy, 1 power, 8 might unit, which is interesting because we are in a color that can ramp up. So this is where it gets really interesting with Master Yi, right? On one hand, we have the Calm, which wants us to be reactive, not playing a ton of units, really just trying to get the most value out of those spells. And the other side being Body is all about, we have ramp, we have big bodies that we can play and wanting to do extra stuff on that end. So it's interesting to see the 2 different sides of this clashing together. And I do think think that the Master Yi Honed is a great example of that. At 7 energy, 1 power, and 6 might, it enters ready. So you're able to immediately go swinging into a battlefield. And then it also has ganking, which means it really wants to play more into that beefing up the might when your opponent might not be expecting it, to get that little bit of extra, point value that you need to get over your opponent's battlefield. So this is what I'm very curious to see, what cards they included from Origin to round this out. Admittedly, of the 4, and this again might just be showing my control bias, I am very heavily for Annie and Lux, where Master Yi is probably even lower, because at least Garen, you have some very clear Legion combo stuff that we'll talk about shortly that plays into his synergy, where this one does just leave me a bit stumped in terms of the direction that it's ultimately going to go in. Again, we'll have to wait and see what other epics might be yet to be revealed in the Origin set that could go with this, but again, this small disclaimer I'll add is from the developer's lens. They had openly said that these are meant to be more introduction and training tools than an all-out, must-buy style of product. Now, Lux, I love everything about this, and it feels so close to, like, if we get a couple more sets, it might actually just be really good because of the domain combination. So Mind and Order, which is the control combination in this game, Lady of Luminosity, Starter Lux, when you play a spell that costs 5 or more, draw 1. This literally says every good removal card that we have revealed so far in Origin is also then going to get a draw card attached to it. That is literally every control player's dream at the end of the day. Like, look, I get they're higher costed. I get it feels bad to spend your entire turn doing that, but we also have other cards that get value out of playing spells. So this really does feel like there's something there, admittedly, but the Final Spark does feel a little bit bad, her signature spell, because it is 8 energy. And to be fair, it doesn't require any power. That is definitely worth noting. But it deals 8 damage to a unit, where, on the other hand, we did get, I promise I'm not going to try to call it Vengeance, but we got the other card that allows it just to remove any unit instead. So, of course, this is definitely going to come down to, how much does a 2 energy matter versus paying a power? How much, is 8 damage good enough to be a removal, or is Volibear all over the place where we just need the hard removal option? Have to wait and see, but I do see a world where we combine this with the other mind removal spells that we got that, again, are over cost 5 or more, which are then going to draw us a card. Lux is going to be in a pretty great position to churn through your deck and help find more removal spells so you can eventually, get those points going. And, well, we need a good unit that goes with the, hey, I want to play spells mindset, and spoiler, Lux Illuminated is exactly that at 6 energy, 1 power, and 5 might. When you play a spell that's 5 or more, give me +3 might. So this goes up to 8 might. And then again, with Final Spark or some of those other cards that we mentioned, you are going to be taking out one of their key, if not their biggest threat for that turn. So the 8 might off of Lux should be good enough to make sure you're holding that battlefield. Again, downside is outside of combat or the effect of getting her big, the 5 might is going to be a little weak to, defend in that regard. It is going to feel a little bit bad if you don't have that spell at times to boost it up, but this just gets me really excited from a champion card perspective, again, because we're able to line this up where it's a removal plus a big might swing, plus we're drawing a card off of our legend ability. It kind of just checks all the boxes for me. And then to go one step further, which really makes me hope that we're going to see like one more really good mind or even order spell in the main set, is Lux Crown Guard. As a reaction, add 2 energy to use towards spells. Only has 2 might, so it is going to be very, very weak on defense, but it allows us to line up the Final Spark or to line up the Singularities a turn earlier than our opponent might be expecting, which can give us that clear that we so desperately need to catch back up in the game or buy ourselves a turn. So this is one that, again, I am very high on. For me personally, of the 4, this is my top pick. Again, I promise I'm not just being biased, but look, draw a card is my favorite, sentence in card games at the end of the day. All my years of playing Control, anytime I see this type of effect, I immediately gravitate towards it, and I want to see how we can pull this together to make it good. Again, the downside of being exclusive cards and not knowing how many we need is going to make this a little bit difficult to plan around, but I already have one on the way, so maybe we'll have to buy a few more. And then last but not least, for our legends, we have the Might of Demacia himself, Garen, with the body and order combination. When you conquer, if you have 4+ units at that battlefield, draw 2. When are you ever getting this ability, right? Now, to be fair, the only reason why I might rate this a little bit higher than the Master Yi is because you have to remember, in order, we have a ton of cards that produce tokens for us, as well as cards that buff tokens like the Darius or just even like Decisive Strike here. So there is a world where we actually get to make all of this happen. The downside is we are likely going to be spending 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 cards of lining up these big combos to conquer a battlefield just so we can draw 2 cards. Definitely feels like a I'm already winning more situation if you're able to line this up and have enough tokens to count for this, or you just have enough big might plus a big spell like back to back or something to save the 2 units that needed to be saved, and maybe it all lines up, right? It does leave me a little bit questioning what we might see here. But again, Decisive Strike, really quick, just to mention it, give friendly units +2 might this turn. When you combo this with Darius to go into the +1 from that, then +2 from this, right? Suddenly we have 4 might tokens that are swinging in. Sure, that's going to be fine. It requires a bit of setup to make it all come together. But keep in mind, this is only when conquering, so you then have to retreat from the battlefield and set up a turn to do it again, right? You're going to want to get the additional draw effect as many times as possible so that you can find these big top-end finishers, which I'm not sold on this just yet. We'll have to wait and see where it lands. Then we have Garen Rugged as one of the champion units, a 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might. Assault 2, Shield 2, just gets bigger. Not much to write home about there other than, yes, it dies to the removals that we talked about earlier because it's only 5 might unless it's in combat. So cool flavor thing for Garen wanting to be in combat. And then we have the Garen Commander with a 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might. Other friendly units here have +1 might. So again, leaning into more of the Darius strategy, which I'll have to remember the other effect of it, but I'm pretty sure Darius is just better in all situations here, other than the fact that, well, it's a champion unit, so you can play it with next to your legend, which means you can always have access to this Garen, but we are trying to find other ways to get the additional might once more so we can activate the legend effect for conquering the battlefield with multiple units. So overall, Garen might not be the most exciting from the design perspective because it is just bodies and tokens and mights, but that does really lend itself quite well to the overall what we've come to know and love of Demacia. So sometimes you just need some big dumb idiots to take the battlefields for you and make sure you get those last couple points. But that wasn't all. We still actually have 8 more cards on top of that of additional cards that we can talk about. So going through these a bit more quickly, Firestorm, a 6 energy, 1 power, deal 3 to all enemy units at a battlefield. Keeping in mind with the other anti that we talked about, we can get this up to 4. If you have the battlefield that increases damage, then it's going up to 5. Probably fine for the starter deck battles that you're going to be doing or the Proving Ground battles. Okay-ish if you're expecting a very token-heavy meta, but ultimately just insanely expensive for what it wants to be doing. A 2 energy Incinerate, deal 2 damage, ping. Great flavor effect for Annie's ability since we said we want to recover 2 of our runes at the end of the turn anyways, but again, for how this lines up with the other removal options that we've already seen in the set, you're most likely just playing those over this from the card slots anyways, right? Zephyr Sage, I missed the old version. 6 energy, 1 power, 6 might, shield +1. It's a calm card, right? It's what we want to be doing that has the shield. It gets the extra value on defense. It obviously can go really well into the Master Yi deck that now goes up to basically a 9 might on defense. So again, this does seem to lend itself quite more into the ramp up into our bigger body options and just solo defend on battlefields. But I would have liked to see a little bit more from the calm option. However, we know that we do have some good tools that we can lean into from the main set that would combo well with this. Gentleman's Duel, the 6 energy, 1 power, Action, give a friendly unit +3 this turn, then choose a enemy unit. They deal damage equal to their mights to each other. Now, this is an interesting one because this is effectively challenge copies 4 through 6. And for those that don't know, it just means it's a very similar card to another one that you're running in the deck. And if you want a couple more fight spells, as they're called, then Gentleman's Duel, you're probably playing like a 1 or a 2 of in addition, right? This is one that I think definitely will see play like out of these 4, right? I do like the idea of Gentleman's Duel, even if it's only a 1 or a 2 of, because we've seen so many times in the body style of decks, they just have a big beefy unit that they can use to combo with a removal spell to get rid of your own problematic unit that you're trying to set up for the next turn. So for that reason, I definitely see Gentleman's Duel making a splash in the main set as just another fight card option. How many copies we'll have to wait and see, but I could definitely see at least 1 to 2 making an appearance. And then we have the last batch of cards, which are really interesting in my opinion. We have 2 Energy Flash as a reaction, move up to friendly units to base. So really nice of just giving a surprise might factor. If we get more move style effects, we'll have to see how much value that this gets out of the rest of the spoiler season. But one that I would not be shocked at all if this finds a home. Then we have Blast of Power, the one I've hinted at earlier, the 6 energy, 1 power. Kill a unit on a battlefield. Again, if we have a control heavy meta with big bodies, this is an automatic 3 of, and this is an exclusive card. So again, it's higher costed, but if the format slows down enough, we need this. So if there was a single card that, caught my attention in terms of where the meta might end up, Blast of Power is definitely something. Okay, it's probably a 2 of, to be fair, because of your other removal options, right? But a card that I know that I need and that I am going to want for my own personal set and hopefully have a 3 of is going to be Blast of Power, because again, Proving Grounds is something that will most likely be a little bit difficult to get our hands on later. Up next, we have Recruit the Vanguard, a 6 energy action spell. Play 4 1 might recruit unit tokens. They can be played to your base or to battlefields you control. So this is really interesting because the battlefield clause, as we just talked about with like Garen, this could be a massive might swing if you have Darius or just other bonus-based effects. Now, it is very expensive at 6, but if you are playing a low-powered deck that's not going to recycle a bunch of runes, you are going to be able to line up turns where you can surprise your opponent with a Recruit the Vanguard into some of the other buff spells that you might want, or again, just having an option to line this up for your next turn to have a swarm of tokens coming at your opponent that line up with either, again, Garen's ability because you want to draw 2 cards, or Victor, who wants to play things, if you're doing the all-in token version, like his signature spell or grand stratagem to just close out the game and get those last couple points you need. And then last but not least, we have Vanguard Attendant, a 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might unit that simply reads, I enter ready. Totally fine. Again, just a good old hasty style of card that can conquer a battlefield when you need it, but ultimately nothing to write home about. It is just a good old Demacia unit doing Demacia things that we are excited to see. So lastly, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Again, I am most excited about Lux. I think this is one that has so much potential depending on where the rest of spoiler season goes, as well as future card set design. So maybe Lux is in set 2 and she just gets an upgraded version, which would be insane. But this is definitely a card that I am very excited to take to locals and just to play something extremely different compared to the main set Legends a lot of people might be expecting. So at the end of this, as a reminder and just as a good note I'll put out there, remember to have fun at your locals, right? We all want to grow the game. We want to foster a good, healthy local competitive scene that is going to make sure that the game sticks around, because this fall, if you haven't been following my tweets or whatnot, we have like 8 new games coming out between now and the end of the year, or big set releases. Like, there is just a lot going on. So make sure to work with your local community to make sure you're all enjoying Riftbound to its fullest. But with that out of the way, again, let me know your thoughts below of what your favorite card from today was. But until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.